Hey everybody, I'm Bad Lookhead, and today we're going to be looking at 4 ways to solve 4x4 Rubik's Cube. So today we're going to be looking at the big 3 of sorts when it comes to the 4x4, plus one extra special one which we'll find out about at the end. Now the first method we're going to be looking at today is the reduction method, also known as Redux. So in reduction, you start by building a white center out of these mini centers. Then you do the same thing for yellow. Now that you've got these two opposite centers built, you can go around the cube and make these other 4 centers, making sure to keep the correct color scheme. Now that you've got all these centers finished, you can go around the cube painstakingly solving every edge one by one. Now once you've got all of these edges and centers paired up, you can solve it exactly like a 3x3. And well, you know how I said that you can solve it exactly like a 3x3? Well, sometimes you might run into something like this, where one of the edges is flipped, and this is called OLL parity. What you have to do to solve this is to do a long, uncomfortable algorithm that I don't know how to finger trick properly. And now all the edges are flipped the right way, and you can continue solving it just like a 3x3. And well, you know how I said that you can continue solving it just like a 3x3? Well, that was wrong, because once you finish PLL, you might run into something like this, where 2 of the edges are swapped, and this is called PLL parity, and you have to do a slightly less long, but just as uncomfortable algorithm that, again, I don't know how to finger trick properly. And that's the reduction method. Our next method is the Yao method, popularized by a guy called Robert Yao, and it's mainly used on 4x4, but you can use it on any other big cube. So what you do to start is you build any center. I'm going to start with white because I'm not color neutral. Then you build the opposite center. Then, here, instead of making the centers, you make 3 of your cross edges. Luckily, one of mine was already done. So now that we've got 3 of our cross edges done, we can solve all of the other centers. So now that we've got our centers solved, we can solve our last cross edge, which for me is orange. And insert that into its place. Now we can go into a thing called 3-2-3 edge pairing, which is where you solve the last 8 edges mostly at the same time. So this step is more efficient than Redux because you solve more than one edge at one point in time. See there, I've solved 3 edges at once. Then you solve 2. And then you solve your last 3 edges in any way you like. Then, now you've got the cross solved. This is more efficient than the reduction method, because you don't have to look around the cube for cross pieces, which you would normally be able to do during inspection if you were on 3x3. And yes, you can still get both types of parity with this method. Yep, both types of parity. That's the Yao method. A third method that we're going to be looking at today is the Hoya method, popularized by this guy here. I don't know how to pronounce his name. So what you do is you start by solving 2 opposite centers that aren't your cross color. So that can be, if you use white as your cross, you can solve red and orange or green and blue. Now once you've got these 2 opposite centers finished, you solve two adjacent centers. One of them has to be your cross color. See, I've solved the white one, which is my cross color. Now what you can do is you can flip over to the centers that aren't solved, and you can start solving your cross edges. Now once you've got all of your cross edges solved, you take the one on the front with the two unsolved centers, and you do FL to move it out of the way so you can solve the last two centers. And again, just like in the Yao method, you've got a cross. And you can go into your 3-2-3 edge pairing again. And again, now that you've got all the edges solved, you just solve it like a 3x3. And yes, you can get parity with this method as well. And that's the Hoya method. Now our last method is something a little bit special. See, those last three methods I talked about, the 3x3 stage is meant to be solved with CFOP. Now this method, the Meyer method, is meant to be solved with Ru. So with this, you want to solve two centers, both them being the centers of your first and second blocks. So for me, that's going to be orange, orange, and red. So I've got these two opposite centers solved. Now, you want to solve all the edges of one block. So I'm going to solve orange. So I'm going to start by solving the orange and green edge. I'm going to pair that edge up with its corresponding corner and insert it into the block. Just like that. I'm going to do the same thing with the second edge and the last corner. So now that you've got your first block solved, you can solve the rest of the centers. So now that we've got all our centers solved, you want to make one last edge and put it right here above your first block. Then you turn it around so the block is on the back, and you solve all of your last edges using any technique that you'd like. And now that you've got all of your edges solved, you can start solving it just like a 3x3. And before you do CMLL, you need to count the number of good or bad edges you have. So if you've got an odd number of bad edges, you need to do the OLL parity algorithm. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got 4 bad edges, which is an even number, so I'm in the clear. I don't have OLL parity. So now, you do your CMLL. Then, EO. And finally, you do your LSE. And you can get parity in LSE. I know it's horrible, but parity is just something that you have to live with if you like big cubes. Now, luckily, I didn't get parity on this solve. But yeah, that's our last method, the Meyer method for solving the 4x4 with Ru. So that was 4 methods to solve a 4x4 Rubik's Cube. So if you really like watching these videos, then you should give this video a like and comment what video you want me to make next.